Hi, Will. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay,
I'm
okay,
doing
so
well. I hope you are too.
okay, so it's a local currency bond of 50 billion shillings. How's it going to work? I mean, how important are local bonds to supporting the Kenyan economy?
So I will start by answering your second question. That is how important the local bonds are in supporting the Kenyan economy, and then about the specific bond itself. So assuming that some viewers may not know, I will start by saying that the Treasury bonds are usually risk-free investments that typically offer interest rates every 6 months for its term period, which could be between 2 to even 30 years. And in Kenya, most bonds that are usually issued are usually fixed interest bonds, which means that the interest rate that you've agreed upon as at issuance is fixed. You know, it's locked for the duration of the bond. It will not change no matter what happens in the market. So essentially, it's that when you buy a bond, what you're doing is lending to the Kenyan government, yeah? And this bond will then be used to finance the budget deficit or maybe an infrastructure. For instance, like the Kenyan budget, the 2021-2022 budget that was 34 billion US dollars, the budget deficit was 8.2 billion. And out of this, the government intends to finance 70% from the domestic market, that is, yeah. So you can see just how important it is, and a large portion of that budget, to give perspective, is usually was allocated to what the government calls the Big Four agenda, whose goal is just to promote sustainable economic growth, accelerate job creation, with spending areas being universal healthcare, affordable housing, and such. And then for the infrastructure bonds, those are like specific type of bonds that are usually issued for specific infrastructure project, and they're also usually not taxed. So you can see just how crucial the bonds are towards supporting the Kenyan economy. Another thing to note is that the local bonds are usually very important to the government because the government gets to borrow cheaply compared when it's borrowing externally. Yeah. So to answer the second question, just about this bond that is issued in with the World Bank, I would say that it's still not clear what the bond will be used for.
Okay.
However, as I earlier mentioned, that most of the bonds issued by the Kenyan government are usually either to fund a budget deficit or infrastructure. We think that since the 50 billion bond is going to have a 5-year tenor, it's going to be used to fund the government budget deficit. And this is because the infrastructure bonds are usually of longer tenure. So this for 5 years is definitely going to be used to fund the budget deficit, and also will really be in line with what the World Bank does, which is issue bonds that are supposed to help countries achieve sustainable development goals. Yeah. So I think this is what this bond means. Yes.
Yeah, so what expectations, what do we expect investors, how do we expect investors to react to this? What sentiments are we expecting from investors?
So currently, investor sentiments in Kenya are very low in the medium term. And this is because attributable to the Finch rating, the one that was issued last week with a negative outlook. And then also the fact that this is an election year for Kenya, and it's elections here are really volatile. So there is also rising inflation rates currently, which means that investors will continue to demand for a premium. Though I think that the fact that this bond is being issued in collaboration with the World Bank, there might be maybe a slightly improved performance, yeah? And it is also worth noting that the Kenyan government has had like a very huge appetite for debt, and there's been a high number of bonds being issued in the market, which is also raising fears that the private sector is being starved of credit, especially SMEs that I usually work with, you know, so banks will put more money in buying those bonds because obviously they're low risk, instead of lending it to the small and medium-sized enterprises that actually do need it. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Sheila, for that. Sheila Otieno, investment analyst from Vai Capital. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Will. It was nice being here.